prognosis negative. Heard that, 2 or 3 times from George in this episode. The dog. Like the truth, it's not an episode that I really would go out of my way to see. It was fine. It wasn't one of my favorites. I definitely would rank it lower than the truth, in my opinion. But really, the only thing that stands out to me the most about this episode is prognosis negative. Way George would say it when he would go to the apartment, and he would Jerry would buzz him in. And the storyline that I actually was more intrigued by, honestly, was the storyline of Elaine and George realizing that they really have nothing in common. They really have nothing to talk about when it's just the two of them. And we've had a change, though, in an upcoming episode in Season 3 that I really enjoy, which we'll get to that a little bit later, which I really enjoy. Can we talk about that episode? That was so good. But the dog, that story will probably intrigue me more than the main story. So the main story of this episode, the dog, comes from Jerry was flying home from a show, and there was an older gentleman sitting next to him making conversation, which again, Jerry has literally no interest in talking to people at all. And then the guy falls ill. They make an emergency landing in Chicago where he was going to be taken to a hospital. But he's concerned who's going to watch his dog, Farfel. And he asks Jerry to. Jerry basically feels like I have no choice. And it's just a disaster. Jerry just despises that dog. Which we never see him on camera. They just play just a voice and act like he was just in Jerry's room the whole time. But, yeah, Jerry just despised Farfel. Had no interest in him whatsoever. He wanted him gone so bad. And he felt like I think his name was Gavin, or whatever the guy's name was. Let me double check here. The guy's name was... Where is it? Oh yeah, Gavin Pallone. Gavin Pallone. And Jerry was not hearing from him at all as to when he was going to come by and pick up Farfel. So Jerry thought the guy literally just abandoned him and whatnot. Well, in the midst of all this, him, Elaine, and George were supposed to be going out to see the movie Prognosis Negative, which they all wanted to see together. Kramer was supposed to watch Farfel. But Kramer came over and said he can't watch Farfel because he's going over to his girlfriend Ellen's, which what happened with him and Tina, I don't know, Elaine's roommate. Since Tina was around, we never really saw Tina again though, not much. I think the last time we had seen her, the last episode we ever see Tina, I believe, was in, as far as I can remember, was in the opposite, when Elaine got kicked out of her apartment. But Kramer said he was going to go break up with his girlfriend Ellen, which that's where Jerry and Elaine both mentioned how they both never liked Ellen. Even though, once again, how long has it been since it's literally the first time we ever heard about Ellen? So Kramer was going over to do that. So Jerry says he can't go because he has to watch Farfel. He doesn't trust leaving Farfel by himself in the apartment. So George arrives, of course, when Jerry buzzes him in, you hear George go, prognosis negative, and he comes upstairs like ready to go, and he breaks the bad news to Jerry. So then George and Elaine basically, well, Jerry's just like, you two go, you'll have fun, but George and Elaine are like, no, it's like not admitting that they both have nothing to talk about when Jerry's not around. So Jerry finally says, guys, give up, I'm not going. So they go. I think they went to see Ponce de Leon. I can't remember. One of the two times they're going to go see Ponce de Leon. But then they went to the coffee shop afterwards just to chill and whatnot, and they literally had nothing to talk about. Only thing they really talked about was noteworthy that Elaine only been to New York for lived in New York since 1986, for 5-6 years. The only time they really got talking and got a conversation going whenever they were talking about a certain coffee. Let me see what it was called again. I remember seeing it before. Morning, where is there? Where is Morning Shine, wherever I saw the certain type of coffee, which George is surprised to hear though, because Jerry doesn't like drink caffeine. Elaine says Jerry doesn't know that it is caffeine. And then there was like a second time, like later in the episode, where they were making fun of Jerry and how like he like gargles or whatnot in the bathroom or something like that. But that's the only time they're able to actually make conversations when with just the two of them is when they make fun of Jerry. But then Jerry finally got fed with the dog. He was getting ready to take Farfel to a pound. But Elaine was showing some compassion, saying like, don't do that. Give him another day. Maybe the guy will call. And then Jerry even called the hospital where he was staying at. He had checked out a few days later. So Jerry was more like, that's it, Farfel, you're going to the pound because I'm tired of this. And then Elaine offered to stay and for Jerry to go to the movies with George. But the catch was, if Jerry went with George, he couldn't see prognosis negative because Elaine really wanted to see prognosis negative with Jerry. So then George finally decides, gets there, again, prognosis negative. And then they go to the movies and Elaine has a hard time with the dog. And then finally Gavin calls. And Elaine's like, well, it's about time. Jerry and George, meanwhile, are at the movies. And I think the only movie they were going to see was sold out. I think by Ponce de Leon, it was sold out. So the only thing available was prognosis negative. And Jerry was like torn. He's like, do I see it? Do I not see it? Do I see it? Do I not see it? Finally, he gives in. They see it. Also, side note, forgot to mention this. So when Kramer went to go break up with Ellen, at first he was like ripping on her, like, big time. Of course, she just sat there and took it like a champ. And then the next scene, Kramer goes, I take it all back. I take it all back. I love you. I love you. It's like, how long were you guys together, though? Because, like, once again, he was just with Tina the last episode. But after this, of course, Kramer didn't want anything to do with Jerry and Elaine because he knew that they didn't like Ellen. Because how demanding and all sorts she was. But anyways, so, getting back to the dog. Gavin finally comes and picks up Farfel. And basically he makes conversation with Jerry. I think he had Bell's palsy, I think he said he had in the end. And Jerry says that, I called the hospital, you had checked out, and he says he went to another Bell's palsy specialist or whatnot, which is why. But Jerry's sort of things, it kind of gives you that sense of, like, did he really not want to see Farfel again? He wanted an excuse to be away from Farfel for a little bit longer. But then, of course, eventually, he's like, oh, you're going to come visit Farfel probably before the end of the month. And Jerry's like, here's another prediction. I never see you or that dog ever again. And he leaves. But then eventually it comes out also that when Jerry and Elaine were going to go see Prognosis Negative with everyone else, it's revealed that Jerry didn't like Prognosis Negative when he saw it with George. But he didn't want to tell Elaine that he saw it because he had promised her they'd see it together. But Jerry had no interest in seeing it again because he thought it was boring, it was long, there was no story, it was pointless. He was trying to find any way to get out of it, but he couldn't. But then he gave in, he caved, and he went, even though, he was not interested at all. Now, there was a deleted scene, actually, that showed, it kind of like showed reason for Farfel's, tough behavior, and Jerry, what's it called? And there was some story there where Kramer was going to, gave Turkish taffy to Farfel, which leads to Gavin coming back and saying, "What did you do to my dog? This and that." Which, of course, was cut. And to me, it was some points, especially when they were kind of making it seem like that Gavin was a little happy to be away from Farfel, which may have been why it took long for him to get back together. But also, of course, Kramer did eventually break up with Ellen, and that's that. But that's the dog. Talked a little bit longer than I thought I would. Again, an okay episode. Not one of my favorites. Not one I would go back and watch again out of the blue. Not one that stands out to me much. The next two, though, oh, those are good. I really can't wait to talk about those, especially the next one. The next one was a good one. One of my favorites. Not one of my favorites. But tell me, guys, what are your thoughts on the dog episode of Seinfeld? Leave thoughts down in the comment section below. Slap a like on the video and subscribe for more content to come on my channel. Follow me on Twitter as well at DemandAirboy93. Till then, guys, I'm checking out. I'll see you all later. Have a good night. Peace out, everybody.